All right, welcome. I hope we're right on time. This is a big deal, intermittent fasting. Let me just start with the big why. Why would you want to intermittent fast before we get into the fast? Massive reason, fat adaptation. Now we talked about fat adaptation last week with ketosis, but I'll tell you this right now, this is even better. Because now, without eating for a period of time during the day, we are forcing our body to use this. When I do this, that means fat. So yeah, I have fat too. Visceral fat, and believe me, we all have fat. So, but the idea is when we're not eating, we actually are forcing our body into fat adaptation, even more than ketosis. It is magic. I'll tell you what, there is my wife and I, who is just running the camera, Marilyn, who you all know. I'll tell you this, in our latter years, is probably the nice way to say it, nothing has made a bigger impact on our anti-aging, even our energy, than intermittent fasting. This is, in fact, a big deal. So pay attention. This goes beyond even the why before the fast, but fat adaptation is massive. Hormone optimization is one of the big things that you get with intermittent fasting, and I will explain why here. So this is what we want to do to put ourselves in the right state before a fast. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because we're training our body every day with little fast. By the time we do a bigger fast, our body's more adapted. So just from that standpoint, it makes sense to intermittent fast before we actually fast. I like to think of intermittent fasting. Oftentimes when you talk about fasting for a period of time, people get confused. But when you tell them to eat in an 8 to 4 hour window, people go, oh, I can do that. And here's the best part, pick your window. Right? So you can move that window around. I typically eat in a 4 hour window. So sometimes it's between 3 and 6. Sometimes it's a little later, 4 to 7. You can move your window. Some of you may like to eat in the morning because oftentimes you hear intermittent fasting is defined as just skip breakfast, which is true, right? Skip breakfast and eat lunch maybe at noon and your last meal at 6. So now that means I ate in a 6 hour window. Now, I'm going to say this, stick to 2 meals typically in that window. So if you choose an 8 hour window, 2 meals. Here's the best part. You could technically take 90 minutes a meal, meaning eat very slow, relax, enjoy yourself. Now, typically my first meal of the day, I'm in and out, right? It's typically a higher fat, good quality protein meal, done, in and out. And I can talk about some of those meals, but it's simple. And then my dinner typically is a longer, relaxing meal. That's the way I like to do it. Look, when you go to European countries, typically they don't eat all day. They'll do their cappuccino in the morning. We'll talk about that. They'll do their latte or espressos during the day, but that's it. But then they have a 3 hour dinner. Very typical. When we got back from Italy, or we went to Italy this past fall, we experienced that, right? So it's very easy to pick a 3 hour window and just do it once a day. So today is a great example. I haven't eaten yet, but I'm going to, and it will probably be at least a 2 hour window of eating. So basically pick your window, 8 to 4 hour window. Start with maybe an 8 hour window. Some of you may start with a 10 hour window, eating twice in that window, and then bring it down to a 6 hour window and eventually a 4 hour window. And I'm going to tell you how you know if your eating window is working for you. So that equals, if you're 8 hours, that equals a 16 hour fast. If you're doing a 4 hour window, it's a 20 hour fast, right? But it's easier to think in the eating window. All right, so before I get into how you know what window is good for you to determine that period of time and how to test, let me bring out a couple big, huge whys here that this is really important. So when you look at studies, you actually get some autophagy even in a 15 hour fast. Now, granted, it's not going to be autophagy you're getting in a 5-day fast or even a 36 hour fast, but you're getting some autophagy. So considering you're doing it every day, that's a big deal. It adds up, right? So a 24 hour fast, you definitely get even more autophagy. So like today, if I eat 1 meal, I got more autophagy than on a day that maybe I ate in a 6 or an 8 hour window. So you still get autophagy, which means you're getting stem cells, right? Your body's producing more stem cells. And we know this. The older you get, the less stem cells you produce. And therefore, yeah, we age prematurely. and I said that this really has transformed my wife and I as far as, anti-aging. It really does. And again, it takes some getting used to, because at first people are like looking for the meal. You're just not used to skipping meals. And remember, the average American is eating 17 to 21 meals a day, believe it or not, because it's this, it's that. We don't want to do that. We want to go without food so our body is eating this. Look, when you look at studies on anti-aging, living longer healthy, that's the key. That's one of my goals, living longer healthy. I don't want to just live longer, I want to live longer healthy. Nothing holds up except truly caloric restriction. Here's where we get confused. We're not talking about caloric restriction like this. Okay, I'm going to eat half of my plate, right? This is American caloric restriction. I'm going to eat half my plate because I don't want to be gluttonous, so I'm going to cut my calories. So we cut the calories by eating half the meal, a portion of the meal, right? That doesn't work. Your metabolism gets lower and lower and lower. All of a sudden, you're eating 500 calories a day, eating salad, and you're gaining weight, or at least you're losing muscle and gaining fat. Let me put it that way. Your weight may stay the same, but it doesn't work. It lowers the metabolism, failure. So when we look at ancient cultures, how do they eat less? Because at the end of the day, they do eat less, but they do it by eating less often. So I have a saying, don't eat less often. Or I say it this way, eat less by eating less often. At the end of the day, I promise you, I do eat less calories than the average person. However, my body doesn't think it's starving. See, that's what happens when you restrict calories. Eventually, it does think it's starving. So what does it do? It wants to hold on to its fat, and it'll do anything it can to hold on to its fat. So when you eat these 2 meals in an eating window, eat to full. At least eat 1 meal to full. You can eat both to full, but you have to eat 1 meal to full, unlike the caloric restrictors. And when you eat to full, you tell your body, you're good, you're not starving. See, we're eating less by eating less often, so therefore our body never thinks it's starving. It works. So we're getting anti-aging. When you look at this, look, caloric restriction, when you look at the study, there's something called the NAD+. I could write that, but it's called an NAD+. Some of you are interested in this science. I get geeked out over it. NAD+ and the NADH ratio. This ratio is very important. When we're in a caloric restricted state, this ratio increases. Very important, because as this ratio increases, we know something called telomeres. These are the biological clock that are at the end of every one of our chromosomes. The shorter they get, the closer to death you are. The longer they are, the more time you have. So we know that when this ratio rises, we're adding years to our life. So pretty cool, but this happens in a caloric restricted state. And so that's just one of the things that's actually a marker for a caloric restricted state. And by the way, NAD+, I've done an IV with it, but people are doing IVs with it. It's expensive, but it does. It in fact also helps our brain and the longevity of our brain. So a lot of important benefits. Now, I can keep going down the science of why caloric restriction works to, extend our life. And more importantly, that NAD+ ratio that I just showed you, it is actually shown to prevent age-related diseases. And isn't really that the key? Because the older we get, now all of a sudden we are targets for things like heart disease, strokes, Alzheimer's, dementia. Keep going down the list. Well, that ratio, when raised, you start preventing those diseases. So therefore, the best way to prevent those age-related diseases, and I could add obesity to that too, is caloric restriction. But don't eat less. Eat what? Less often. That's the key. That's the power of intermittent fasting. So let's do like the rest of the world. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. It's not. That's an American thing. So maybe you just start by skipping breakfast. All right. So how do we know though? Because some of you are going to say, yeah, but I'm just, I feel like I'm just wiped out. I don't know if it's working for me. Well, we do this test. I already taught you how to measure your ketones and glucose using the Keto Mojo, and if you didn't see the past video, go back and watch them, but it's getketomojo.com, and you can get this meter that does both glucose and ketones with a single blood drop. Pretty simple. And what you want to do is you want to test your morning glucose and ketones right off the bat. So let's just make up numbers. So let's say it's 70, and let's say your ketones, let's say you're in ketosis, because some of you are already. So let's say you're 0.8. That's your morning numbers. Now, before your first meal, let's say you chose an eating window. Let's say your first meal is going to be noon, and let's say 6 p.m. would be your last meal. Okay, so we chose a 6-hour eating window, which would give us about an 18-hour fast, right? So we are going to, right before the first meal, that's what BFM stands for. You didn't know that? Now you do. So before your first meal, we test again. Let me tell you what's going, means it's working. We want to see a trending down of glucose, and we want to see a trending up of ketones. So maybe this only moves to, let's say it just goes to 1, maybe even 0.9, just a little bump up, and maybe this is 68. So just a trending down. That works. That window's working for you. I would argue even if it stayed statistically the same. So 72, that's statistically the same. 2 one way or another is basically the accuracy of the meter. Let's say it's 0.7, 0.9, statistically the same really. I say it works. Some of you are going to notice maybe jump up to 1.2. You're going to jump up considerably, maybe even higher, and some of you may even have a greater drop in your glucose. That means it's working. Now let's look at the opposite. Let's say instead of 70, now all of a sudden you're 80 glucose, and typically these move opposite, right? And instead of 0.8, now maybe you're 0.4. Okay, that didn't work. So what do? Shorten the window until you get a little more fat adapted. Right? We want to see glucose dropping and ketones rising through the day as you fast. Now, so a day like today, if I ran out of strips, but and I will have new strips that are on their way. But on a day like today, let's say I started I'm in ketosis like you all. So let's say I started at maybe 1.2. I would probably be 2 something at this point during the day because I fasted much longer. So as the day goes on, my ketones continue to rise, is an indicator that my body's burning more and more fat for energy. So I will say this, during the fast, you may see that turn where it's like, why are my ketones dropping towards the end of the day? Because during a fast, your body's burning up the ketones so readily that you can end up seeing a drop. But right now, during the intermittent fast, you want to see that lowering of glucose and the rise in ketones. All right, what about your coffee? I know, I want to get up in the morning and have my coffee. It's that warm thing. Test. It's going to be different for all of you. So what you want to do is test your glucose in the morning as normal, right? You write that number down. So again, let's just say it's 70. But now you're going to do an extra, you don't have to test your ketones here, but do an extra glucose test 30 minutes, okay? 30 minutes after your coffee. Okay, so 30 minutes after the coffee, you're going to retest your glucose. If it stays the same statistically, you're good with your coffee. Some of you will get a drop. That actually is helping you. Okay, let's say it's not good. Let's say it's raising statistically. So do it 3-4 days in a row. Or not, it doesn't even have to be in a row, but 3-4 days just to get an average, right, of whether it's dropping, because stress could send your glucose up. Cortisol goes up, glucose goes up. So if you have a stressful day, bad day to test. Don't exercise. That'll send your glucose up, which is not a bad thing, it's just not a good day to test. So make sure you do this test on a day that you do nothing. On this as well, if you're doing your morning glucose and before meals, exercise before this first meal will throw off your test. So don't do that because that's a whole nother animal. So we want to do it non-exercising. And if it's a stressful day, don't test that day. Wait till the next day because that'll throw your glucose up, throw off your test. All right, so 30 minutes after your coffee, if it's rising, change something about your coffee. Don't just throw the coffee out yet. Add fat to it maybe. Some of you that are doing fat and it's rising, take the fat away. Just do black coffee. Some people do better with black coffee, believe it or not, than adding the fat. Some people do better with fat. So the point is, you have to change something about it. Okay, then maybe it is in fact the caffeine for you, right? You're unlucky. Then try a decaffeinated tea to see if it's in fact the caffeine, or maybe it's a decaf coffee. So you have to try different things to see if it works. If glucose rises consistently, what's happening is you're breaking your autophagy. The rise in glucose will actually break the autophagy, and that's the whole point. We want to get some of the autophagy in the stem cells. So Thomas Seyfried, I actually got this from him. I have to give him total credit for it, because they looked at when tumors were shrinking via autophagy, right? So that it was getting rid of the bad cells. What they noticed was certain people were not shrinking, or they stopped, and maybe they were drinking tea or or coffee or something, and they realized it was different for everybody. So test. We want to test. All right, what about your meds? Don't ever stop meds, even during a longer fast. Check with your doctor. Can't ever tell you to stop with meds. I got that question today. What do I do with my thyroid med? Don't ever stop meds. Talk to your doctor. Always, always, always here. Don't ever stop them. Supplements. On a shorter fast like this, on this intermittent fasting, take your supplements. On a longer fast, 5-day fast, only the supplements that I approve, because they don't move your, they're not pushing your body one way or another. So we don't want to take things like herbs during fast. That's why we're very strict on what supplements to take. Be very careful with supplements. Most supplements we want to stop and just rely on the innate intelligence. So, okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about another why here of why this is a really powerful thing. I said hormone optimization, intermittent fasting, and that's one of the big things that my wife and I both notice, especially as you get a little older. But the hormone optimization is that studies actually show a 2,000 to 3,000% increase in growth hormone for a 24-hour fast. That's pretty powerful. That's why my wife and I, a few times a week, will just eat one meal a day and fast 24 hours. So, you get that growth hormone rise as a compensation. Again, your body is adapting. It doesn't want to use its muscle. It wants to use its fat. So in that adaptation, it raises up its growth hormone to do that. Now, there's something else that happens. Your glucose and insulin, when you're burning your own fat source, are just spot on. So when you start getting more fat adapted, you get this perfect glucose and insulin. If you want to live longer healthy, simply balance your glucose and insulin. The more spikes you have, even a healthy meal spikes insulin and glucose. It's normal. But the more spikes you have, the harder it is for your cells to work, the more oxidation, the more stress. You don't live longer. That's one of the reasons why eating less often you live longer healthy, because you're just simply avoiding these glucose spikes. So hormone optimization. And another amazing thing is that, again, lowering insulin. You have lower insulin when you're burning your own fat, not eating. So again, you're living longer. But the cells, according to studies, whether it's insulin, whether it's any hormone, become more sensitive to the hormones. The key to hormones today, where everyone's out of balance, literally, the key is not taking more hormones, and there's a time and a place to do that. If you don't have a thyroid, you're going to have to take hormones. There's times and places. However, that's not what's happening. Everybody's taking bioidentical hormones in the alternative world. Everyone's taking estrogen, testosterone, all these different hormones. It's like shouting at your kids. In the beginning, they listen. Your cells hear it and go, okay, we're going to make some adjustments. But after a while, the kids stop listening. They don't hear you anymore. The cells don't hear the hormones anymore because they become more deaf. This daily fasting allows your cells to become more sensitive to the hormones. That's the key. That's the key to living longer as well and healthy. We want healthy people. They don't have high testosterone. Healthy people have normal testosterone and the cells hear it. That's the key. By the way, thyroid people, y'all have seen me do this, right? Where I draw the cell and I say, look, all your cells have receptors to hormones on them. Everybody's trying to take hormones, like, and I use this example. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. You can take T4 hormone, that's what most of them actually give you, right? That's your synthroid, your thyroxine, and that hormone has to convert to T3. Then that T3 has to get its message in the cell, and you feel better, and you're an efficient fat burner. Temperature's normal, skin, hair, good, all great, no brain fog. But when we have inflamed cells, which most people do because of toxins, we're going to talk more about that, or the standard American diet, well, what happens is the T3 can't get in. So one of the things we know about intermittent fasting is it gets the cells to become more sensitive, or these receptors to the hormones, to the hormone. So now you need less hormone to feel good. That's the key. Taking more hormones oftentimes just blunts the cell more. So again, the cell becomes more deaf to the hormone. Taking more hormones doesn't work. And by the way, thyroid hormone is a great example. Many of these hormones have to convert. Toxic people don't make that conversion. So not always the answer, taking more hormones if the cell can't hear them. So intermittent fasting, on the other hand, is getting the cells to hear the hormone. So it's a strategy, hormone optimization. You raise growth hormone. Your cells hear the hormones that you have. You get steady hormone levels, which is key. Lower steady insulin, key. All these things are key to controlling inflammation, preventing age-related diseases, living longer healthy. Of course, the less you eat, the less work your cells have to do. Another reason why your body can take that energy, use it to heal things that need to be fixed. When you're driving food into the system constantly, what's happening is your body has to use that energy to digest and assimilate food. So these are all the reasons why intermittent fasting is healthy, extends your life, prevents age-related diseases, and this is why we want to go into this fast already intermittent fasting daily. Pick your eating window, 8 to 4 hours, start doing the testing, test your coffee, stay on your meds unless checked with your doctor, keep taking your supplements. I hope I answered all the questions. I don't know. I think that's it. All right. I'm going to say this though. Next Wednesday, I'm going to talk about a huge topic. How to incorporate feast-famine cycles. You'll see how I learned this, why it works, who needs it. People that are in weight loss resistance, even in ketosis. People that are losing muscle on low-carb diets. People that are just having trouble getting into ketosis. People with thyroid and adrenal issues. Next week, topic is for you. This is very important to do on the front side of a fast. And I'm going to talk about what a partial fast is another option. If you're afraid to water fast, partial fasting, aka fasting mimicking diet. We'll talk about that as well. I may have Jason Fung. Actually, Dr. Jason Fung, he wrote the Complete Guide to Fasting. Amazing researcher out of Toronto Hospital. Nephrologist, brilliant guy, speaking at my seminar November 2nd through the 4th. Practitioners and doctors watching, check that out at hcfevents.com, and my team will put up a link for that. So it's basically all about fasting, all about these premises that you need truly to get people well today. I'm telling you, this with the cellular detox, it's where the magic happens. Don't get well until you fix the cell. This Ancient Healing Strategies, this is how you fix the cells. Okay, I'll see y'all next week.